Well, all this week we've been celebrating 10 years of tenancy deposit protection in England and Wales with our Tenancy Deposit Protection Week, powered by TDS, our TDP partner. And all through the week we've been kind of following the process of protecting a deposit correctly. And right now, as we reach the end of the week, I'm joined once again by Ben Beadle. And Ben, I thought, finale, climax of the week, we could talk now about the end of the tenancy and what happens, because clearly, again, set processes to make sure that the tenancy ends smoothly and amicably. So let's talk about the deposit.
So in a nutshell, there's still an expectation, obviously, that the landlord and tenant are going to check out the property, review the inventory and start the bartering over who gets what. And it's really important that takes place because, as I've said on previous videos, 99% of tenancies end without dispute. So that's the majority of the way that it's going to end, without a dispute. Now, if there is a dispute, the onus is on the tenant to raise it on the insured back scheme, and it does depend whether or not your deposit is custodial or insured. So on insured, tenant will notify us if they are unhappy with what they have got back, if they've got anything at all, and we will ask the landlord for their observations. The landlord will put in their evidence and their side of the story, and we will present that to the tenant. The tenant comments on that, and we then put the whole evidence pack in front of an adjudicator who's got 28 days to reply and issue their decision. The decision goes out the door with the payments, and that is that. So everybody has agreed that it's a final and binding decision. No second bite of the cherry, that's it. On the custodial scheme, obviously we have to go through the repayment process. So we're holding the money on that. So one of the parties will make an application to repay the deposit, and because they've been talking about it outside of the system, hopefully it should be a straightforward matter of knowing what it's about and responding accordingly. So the tenant puts in their repayment request, the landlord logs on to hopefully agree to it, and the money then is paid out. If there is disagreement, then in the custodial scheme we operate a self-resolution phase, whereby although we're notified that there is a dispute, we encourage the parties for 10 days to keep haggling, keep talking, on the basis that most disputes are resolved that way. If it doesn't resolve itself, we then go into evidence gathering, which is exactly the same as the insured scheme.
Now let's talk about timescales, because we do occasionally hear on property tribes from tenants, and one recently said that the landlord wouldn't come back to them with the deductions and was kind of playing a delaying game about returning the deposit. Now that's really not what we would recommend.
100%. So the end of tenancy process needs to be conducted fast and efficiently. And obviously, if the property is in poor state, it will take a little bit longer to get that money back, but it shouldn't be excessive. On the insured scheme, a tenant's got up to 3 months to raise a dispute, so they need to act fairly cautiously to make sure they don't miss that deadline. But essentially, a tenant will make a request for the return of their deposit. If it's not repaid within 10 days by the landlord, or they have no information about what's being deducted, then we're into dispute territory, and they should either raise a dispute on the insured scheme or trigger the repayment request on the custodial scheme and get the ball rolling.
I picked up a tip actually from one of the earlier videos where you recommended that the landlord actually goes into the property perhaps a week or 2 weeks before the end of the tenancy and just flags up any issues to give the tenant a chance to resolve them. And again, I think, prevention is always really better than cure, isn't it?
That's 100% what we're looking to do. A landlord wants an easy life. They want to turn the property around quickly, get the property ready for the next let and the next tenant. The tenant needs their money back as quickly as possible to move on to the next property, or to bridge the loan, as it were, because obviously most likely they'll be paying two deposits effectively. So if there's anything that can be done to minimise any nonsense at the end of the tenancy, then going to inspect the property a couple of weeks beforehand is a really helpful way to steer the tenant on things that they need to do. And I think a tenant will be appreciative of that at the checkout process as well, because then there can be no real excuses for not remedying things that have gone wrong.
I just wondered if you would mind if I asked a couple of questions about one of my own TDP issues, actually done through a lettings agent. But for instance, in one of the kitchens in one of our properties, all the light bulbs had gone. Now, would it be the tenant's remit to replace those before the end of the tenancy, or should I just accept that as a natural cost of being a landlord?
Well, I think it depends on what your tenancy agreement says, but it's those types of odds and sods,
Yes.
if you pardon the expression, that should be done as part of the day-to-day living in the property.
Yeah,
So
I was
that's
surprised they didn't report it.
Indeed, absolutely. But I would expect the tenant to just change the bulb.
Yeah, you would?
100%. Obviously, if it's high ceilings and you've got slightly non-standard fittings and so forth, there might be an argument that you might get somebody in to do it. But if we're talking just fairly standard bulb, then that is the tenant's responsibility to maintain. And obviously, if they're not done during the tenancy, you could put that right.
Yeah.
What I tend to do when I go and visit my tenants is always take a few bulbs with me, because
Good
I can
idea.
do it when I'm there.
Yes, very good idea. Another interesting thing was that the door on the electricity cabinet outside was broken, and the tenant said that was like that when we came, but it wasn't on any inventory, and they didn't report it to me. So in that instance, I just went halves with the tenant on repairing a door. So very often it makes sense just to employ common sense, doesn't it?
I think common sense must prevail throughout all of this. The moment people start pursuing things as a matter of principle, the argument is lost. So, we need to move on with our lives quite quickly. 5, 10, 50 pounds here or there is not going to hopefully break the bank. And if we can keep those good relations throughout the tenancy, it makes those conversations at the end of the tenancy much easier. Because, of course, the landlord's got to weigh up how much time they want to spend faffing around on the dispute process.
I think that's such an important point, because landlords actually do have to value their time, don't they? And, if a landlord gets a bee in his bonnet about pursuing something that's actually quite minor, it can just actually turn into quite an unpleasant mess, can't it?
It can do, and at the end of the day, it's costing the landlord time, it's costing the landlord money. So, in all of what we're doing on our buy-to-let properties, it's a business, it's an investment that we're making. We need to take quite a business approach to how we're resolving the end of tenancy. And as I say, it may well be worth reaching a begrudging agreement just to move on.
Indeed. And I guess as we reach the end of Tenancy Deposit Protection Week here on Property Tribes, what do you hope landlords have taken away from this week, Ben?
I hope that landlords are better prepared.
Yep.
I hope that landlords are clearer on the process and what they absolutely must do to stay the right side of the law.
Yep.
And I hope that landlords have picked up one or two little tips that might really significantly improve their tenancy management and hopefully make it a better end of tenancy process for everybody.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to TDS for powering this week on Property Tribes, and for your support of landlord education through these videos, through this themed week, if you like. We do hope you've enjoyed the content, and if you do have any questions, then please do pop them on the thread here, because Ben is a member of Property Tribes.
That's right.
And you're on hand to answer any questions that landlords may have.
100%.
Fantastic. So we hope you've enjoyed this week, and I'll write a summary of all the different videos below this video, just in case you missed anything. And we'll see you hopefully in 2018 for another week, because it's always changing, isn't it? Always something new to learn.
Indeed. See you next year.